Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about some of the most surprising we're about to talk about that. We just got into the AP poll, a number of things to break down from that, a couple of trends to watch as we head into this season, because it doesn't necessarily bode too well for the number one team, so Georgia, but bodes very well for the top six teams as we head into this upcoming year. But let's get into the surprising or disappointing teams as we head into this year. There are a number of teams that I want to get into. I have one surprising, one disappointing from each conference as we head into this year, and there's definitely some interesting picks on here, but I want to start with the SEC, and I want to start with the LSU Tigers. They are my surprising team this year. I think this one might not be all that surprising. I just think the way that they're going to go about business is going to be a little bit surprising. I think this defense is going to be a little bit better than some people are expecting, and there are a number of reasons that I'm buying into this team and buying into what they're going to do this year. The biggest reason is the O-line. I think when you have an O-line like that, there are so many things that could be not quite as good as it was a year ago, like the quarterback position or like the wide receiver position, but you could be much better on offense because the O-line was that good. Now, I don't necessarily think they're going to be much better on offense because there's not much place to go after last year, but definitely can be a team that can score plenty of points. I can promise you that, and I do think the defense is going to be a little bit better than people expect. I don't necessarily think they're going to be world beaters by any means or be top 20 or 30 in the country, but if they can get up to top 60, top 70 in the country, they're going to be able to make a lot or win a lot of football games. They're going to be able to score points. They have Kyron Lacey and CJ Daniels on the outside. They're one of those teams that I've seen be picked as the underachievers in the conference. I'm going the other direction. I think they have the ability to make a number of plays. I think Harold Perkins being used the right way is one of the best players in the country, and I think he will be used the right way. So it's a little bit of projecting. It's a little bit of, making sure or believing in this coaching staff. But at the end of the day, I do think this is going to be a very dangerous team. Is going to be one that will be in the playoff at the end of the year. As for a disappointment, I do have Missouri here, and it's frankly, I don't think Missouri is going to be a bad team by any means. I really like Missouri. I think Luther Burden is the best offensive player in the country. The thing is, a lot of last year had to do with a couple of different things, and one of the big-time things was the elite cornerback duo they had back there was huge for this team. And I think Drayden Norwood is going to be a great player. I think Toriano Pride Jr. is going to come along and be a really solid player for them. But when you look back at last year, there were multiple games that were decided because Chris Abrams-Drain was an absolute monster, or Enos Rakestraw made a huge play on the back end. And while I like the duo they have, I don't necessarily think it lives up to what they had a year ago. Also, I think a number of things just kind of went their way last year. It's not necessarily they were overly lucky by any means, but they did go 11-2 against a really tough schedule. I think a couple of things went their direction. I think that's likely going to go the other direction this upcoming year because that's usually how the luck works in college football. So this is a team that I think is going to be really good. I think they have the ability to knock off really any SEC team on any given weekend. The thing is, I don't know if they can string it together the same way they did last year, even with a fairly favorable schedule. So I don't necessarily love the Missouri Tigers heading into this year. I think they're going to leave 2024 with a little bit of sour taste in their mouth. Now let's head over to the Big Ten, and I do have Rutgers as my surprise team. This one was easy for me, if I'm being totally honest, because they have a Doak Walker Award level guy in Kyle Mondegai, a very, very talented running back, someone that can straight up handle an offense, take over, and be an absolute dominating force. And I think when you look at this team overall, a Greg Schiano team is a couple of very, very important things, and the biggest one is discipline. They're going to play good defense. They're not going to commit penalties. They're going to wear you down with the run, and they're going to take their moments when they get them. So I do think this is a team that it's not going to be overly pretty. You're not going to turn on the TV and see what you saw from LSU a year ago, but you're definitely going to see some really fun football. There's no two ways about that, and I think it's going to lead to quite a few wins for Rutgers. They do have Ethan Kaliak-Manis, at quarterback, so that's a minor question for sure, but I think he's looked great in camp, and I think he's going to go into the season very confident and be more than fine running this offense. For a disappointment, I don't love this Washington team. I've been pretty open about that throughout this offseason. I think this is a good team. I think they have the ability to make some noise. I think Jedd Fisch is very talented, and Will Rogers is someone that could hit it big. I just tend to believe that's not going to be the case. I think Damon Williams Jr., the backup quarterback, is likely going to finish the season for them at quarterback because I just think this is a team that has lost way too much, particularly on the line of scrimmage. You have so many things to replace. You have so many things that are changing on the fly, and while I think Jedd Fisch is an incredible coach, I think there's just too much in the Big Ten this year for them to compete. I think USC is a better team. I think Nebraska is likely a better team. I think Rutgers could even be a better team this upcoming year. So Washington's going to be a good team. I think they're going to be a good program going forward with Jed Fish. I just think 2024 is going to be a little bit bump in the road and a considerable drop off from what they had a year ago, obviously. It's not going to be a bad team by any means and definitely not going to be a bad program, but I just think it's going to get off to a weird start and kind of finish not necessarily the way that they want it to. For the Big 12, I have Iowa State as my surprise team. This one feels pretty easy to me as well. I do have them going to the Big 12 title game, so that would make sense. Definitely a team that I think is really, really dangerous. I think everyone looks at these Big 12 teams and they see, consistency, they see experience, and Iowa State has that in droves. But the thing is, they have two of the most electric wide receivers in the entire country. Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins are as dangerous as they come, and I think those two guys are going to be a problem for pretty much any defense that they face off against. Truly, they're going to be an absolute problem, and I think you look at someone like Matt Campbell, when you look back at that 2020 season where they had so much success and they did so many great things with Brock Purdy and all those guys up there, I think it's a lot like this team. It's not necessarily to the same level when it comes to experience at quarterback, but when you talk about the talent, Rocco Becht is really, really talented and someone that I expect to take a big time step forward and really be one of the stories of college football this upcoming season. I think he's so talented and one of those guys that is going to, kind of take over the Big 12 this upcoming year. When you're talking about Shadur Sanders and you're talking about Jalen Daniels and Avery Johnson, who I think is also going to have a great year, but when you're talking about all these other quarterbacks, I think Rocco Becht is plenty ready to make some noise this upcoming year. As for disappointment, I'm not buying into this UCF team the same way people are. And I understand there are people that really, really believe in what they did through the portal, and frankly, I do as well. I think they did a great job in the portal and added a ton of players that are going to have huge effects for this team, but I've been pretty honest with this across pretty much every team where you're adding a lot of portal players, it adds a lot of variability. And this is a team that was a good team last year, but wasn't near where they needed to be to win a Big 12 title. So I just think there's too much ground to make up. I don't necessarily think there's going to be overarching a bad team, but KJ Jefferson throwing the ball is not the most confident thing in the world. And if you can absolutely just sell out on the run, it's not going to be too hard of an offense to corral. Now, it is Gus Malzahn calling plays, so it could be much harder than I'm giving it credit for. But overall, I don't know if they have the guys on the defense. I don't know if they have the number of guys they want offensively. I think it is a team that is going to develop into an incredible one over the next couple of years. The program, is going to develop into quite an incredible program. But this year, I think they have a number of names on this team, but they're just not all the way there, putting it all the way together. So I just think with all of the competitive nature in the Big 12 this upcoming year, this is a team that's just going to get the short end of the stick for that one. ACC, I do have the surprise team being Georgia Tech. I think this is a team that everyone's going to be surprised by, frankly, because when you watch this team, it's going to look like a really good football team. And frankly, that's what they are. They just play a schedule that's an absolute nightmare. So we could get to the end of the year. Georgia Tech plays really good football for 12 games, but ends 7-5. That's just kind of the reality of the schedule that they play. And frankly, 7-5 would likely be a pretty good record this upcoming year. I do think this is a team that, led by Haynes King, is going to be very efficient on offense. So a defense, the last thing they want to do is to stay on the field. And that's what Georgia Tech does so incredibly well, is they chip away at you. They're not going to get, big chunk plays. They'll get them every now and then, but the main way they do things is RPOs, short dump offs, just making sure that they keep the yards moving, keep the sticks moving, and really make defenses tired. So I think this is a team that makes life really, really tough for everyone, and definitely one that any given weekend can beat one of those big-time teams in the ACC and totally ruin their season. So I'm not saying Georgia Tech's going to go to the ACC title or anything crazy like that, but there's a game or two in this schedule that they could absolutely just be the story of the weekend, that's for sure. And disappointment, I do think Louisville is going to be a little bit disappointed, and I feel fairly good about this one, weirdly enough. I do think this is a good team, and I think they did a number of things through the portal that were really solid. The D-line is going to be great, led by Ashton Gillette, and then you have the wide receiver core where they brought in Colin Lacey. Definitely going to be a fun group. I don't love Tyler Shuck. I don't think it's nearly the player that Jack Plummer was, particularly in that offense that Jack Plummer knew so well. Tyler Shuck does not know it that well. Now, he's definitely made a number of strides, and when he's on the field, he plays pretty good football. he hasn't been on the field nearly enough for me to feel fully confident in this team. I think another team like Missouri that just had a number of things go their way last year. Not a bad team last year by any means, a very, very good team, but one that got a couple of breaks. There's no two ways about that. And I definitely think in the grand scheme of the ACC, with so many teams that are right around Louisville this upcoming season, I just think they're going to fall behind the NC States, the Virginia Techs, the SMUs at the end of the year. So I do think after a really impressive 2023, I think 2024 for Louisville might just be a little bit of a step back. Overall, it's impossible to figure out these teams, right? There's so many variables going into this season, so many teams that have a chance to make some noise, that there are a number of teams I just put as disappointing that could easily be surprising, and vice versa. So definitely will be a really interesting thing to watch, but there are some teams I'm just not fully buying into, and some teams that I'm watching very, very closely as we head into this year. I think it's going to be just an incredible year, and I think there will be plenty of surprising and disappointing teams as we in 2024, that's for sure. But let's take our second break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the biggest leaps title contenders need to take. We've done this the last couple of days, knocked through the top 10. We'll go a little bit deeper. I think this might be the last edition of this, but maybe I'll feel like I want to do another one tomorrow. Who knows? But let's break that down right after this, so stick with us.